The 1st of March, 1974, Colchester, England. Sometime between 2:30 and 4:10 in the afternoon, a 37-year-old woman named Kay O'Connor was beaten, strangled, and stabbed in her own kitchen. Nothing was stolen. There was no sexual assault. No one saw the killer arrive, and no one saw them leave. Police took over 2,000 statements. They questioned 339 people, and they charged absolutely no one. Here's the part that should keep you up at night. The answer wasn't missing. Somebody knew exactly who did it, knew within weeks, and that person said nothing for 44 years. Welcome to Mortwick, the Dark Records. Today's file isn't really a whodunit, it's a who knew. Colchester in the early 70s was the kind of quiet Essex town where doors stayed unlocked and everybody's business was everybody's business. Kay O'Connor lived on Wickham Road. She worked as a shorthand typist. By every account, an ordinary life, the sort of life that isn't supposed to end in a headline. That afternoon, a neighbor found her on the kitchen floor. Beside her lay a kitchen knife, reportedly the same knife used in the attack. According to the case files, she had been strangled first and stabbed twice. Some of her clothes had been removed, but she hadn't been robbed and she hadn't been assaulted in the way that word usually implies. Whoever did this wanted her dead and wanted nothing else. If a 44-year-old secret with no motive already has the hair on your neck standing up, hit subscribe. The investigation was not lazy, it was enormous. Detectives worked the estimated window of death, roughly 90 minutes, and canvassed the whole neighborhood. 2,000 statements, 339 people brought in and questioned. And that number, 339, is the tell. In 1974, you don't drag 300 people through an interview room unless you have no idea where the line goes. Every one of them was eventually cleared. 339 suspects, 0 arrests. The Essex Constabulary was basically running a real-life game of Cluedo, where every room was empty, every weapon was the same kitchen knife, and Colonel Mustard had an alibi signed by the entire village. According to one account, the killer got in through a broken window at the back, though how they entered is one of the details that's never been pinned down for certain. What is certain is the profile of the crime. No theft, no sexual motive, a woman killed in daylight in her own home, and a killer who evaporated. On paper, a stranger. In reality, and this is the uncomfortable part, almost certainly not. Years passed, then decades. The file didn't close. Cold cases in Britain almost never formally close, but it went quiet. Around 2004, 3 decades after the killing, police went public again with an appeal and reopened the case. Detectives said they wanted to run forensic tests that simply weren't possible in 1974, the kind of science that had turned other cold cases inside out. New information had reached them. For a moment, it looked like Kay O'Connor might finally get an answer. Quick question for you. If a case has been cold for 30 years and forensics still can't crack it, what does that usually mean about the killer? Tell me your theory in the comments below before I tell you what actually happened. I want to see who calls it. But the forensic angle, reportedly, didn't deliver the name. The thing that finally cracked this case wasn't a DNA match, it was a guilty conscience, and it had been waiting in a hospital office since 1974. To understand what happened next, you have to go back to Turner Village Hospital in Colchester. Working there in 1974 was a charge nurse named Patrick Marran, and Marran, it turns out, had been one of the police's chief suspects all along. Also working there was a ward sister, a woman then reportedly around 29 or 30 years old. She has never been publicly named. And weeks after the murder, according to her own account, Patrick Marran walked into her office and told her something no one is ever prepared to hear. He reportedly said, and these are the words she has quoted, "It was me who did that." She had no idea why he chose her. By her account, they weren't close. He simply said it and left her holding it. Imagine being handed that confession, unprompted, by a colleague you barely knew. It's like Frodo being given the one ring by a stranger in the break room, who then clocks out for the day and leaves you to carry the thing up the mountain, alone for the next 44 years. So why didn't she go to the police? The answer is the whole reason this story matters, and it's more damning than any alibi. In her own words, and I'm quoting her account here, "I honestly couldn't have reported it to anyone. In those days you did not speak out, especially against a man who would be supported by everyone in the hospital." She was, reportedly, around 30 years old, a woman, junior in the pecking order, and she had done the math that the era forced on her. Report a respected male colleague on the strength of a private confession with no proof, and she would not be believed. She would lose her job, her family would pay for it. So she buried it. Not because she doubted him, because she was certain, and certain that certainty would cost her everything. The system didn't fail because the truth was hidden. The truth walked right up to it and introduced itself. The system failed because it had built a wall so high that the person holding the answer looked at it and decided she'd be the one who got crushed. A bit like being the only sober person at a party who watches someone spike a drink and realizes no one in the room will take your word over theirs. This is the exact moment a story flips from unsolved to unforgivable. If you want the next file the second it drops, because these cases don't announce themselves, hit the bell. Unlike a certain ward sister, you'll get the whole truth on time, not 44 years late. Fast forward. Reportedly in 2018, 44 years after that afternoon in the kitchen, the guilt finally won. The woman, now in her 70s, went to the police and told them everything: the office, the sentence, the name. And here is the cruel joke history plays. By the time she spoke, Patrick Marran was already dead. Detectives confirmed it. There would be no arrest, no trial, no cross-examination, no verdict, no sentence. After the ward sister came forward, police reviewed the case again, and, reportedly through the Kent and Essex Serious Crime Directorate, concluded there were no further lines of inquiry to pursue. Like every cold case in Britain, it stays formally under review, but under review is not the same as being investigated. A confession relayed second-hand, decades old, about a dead man is not something a court can act on. Legally, Kay O'Connor's murder is still open. Morally, most people who read this file consider it closed. It's easy to make the ward sister the second villain of this story. Easy, and I think wrong. Sit in her office in 1974 for a second. You're a young woman. A man you barely know has just confessed to murder, and you know instantly that the whole institution will close ranks around him and not around you. Reported, and the most likely outcome isn't justice, it's your ruin. That's not cowardice, that's an accurate reading of how power worked in 1974. And the reason it worked that way is the real killer's second accomplice. So here's the debate I actually want to have with you. Was staying silent for 44 years a moral failure, or was it the only rational move a woman had in that decade? There's no clean answer. Leave yours in the comments below. Be honest. Because that's the ugly truth this file leaves behind. Kay O'Connor's killer may have hidden for a few weeks, but her case was hidden by something much bigger and much slower, a culture that made telling the truth more dangerous than keeping a murderer's secret. Kay O'Connor was 37 years old. She was killed in the middle of an ordinary afternoon in her own home by someone who, if the confession is true, walked back into his life and his job and his respectability without a scratch. The one person who could have named him decided, rationally and tragically, that the world would punish her for it instead. The killer got 44 years of quiet. Kay O'Connor got a headstone and a file marked Review. That's not justice. That's just what happened. This has been Mortwick, The Dark Records. Some secrets don't get buried with the person who kept them. They just wait for a conscience to give out. I'll see you in the next file.